Candice Nguyen gives us a rare look at the harrowing cases these Bay Area doctors take on. Candice.
Frank, Heather, refugees who've been tortured or persecuted in their home countries can be granted special protections by the U.S. if they can prove it. But how do you prove trauma, pain, or torture?
They threatened to take away my son. They said we ate dirt because we used to work in the fields, and that the world would be a better place without us.
They beat me, electrocuted my privates.
Were you afraid of coming forward and asking for help?
I see it as a death sentence.
When Dr. Nick Nelson walks through these halls, in a way, he's walking around the world.
Uganda, Kenya, Cameroon, Mali, the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Home countries of his patients, he says, of Bay Area refugees seeking asylum in the U.S.
The main questions I'm trying to answer in a forensic evaluation appointment are, first of all, just to get a really detailed chronological understanding of what the person says happened to them. Can you go like this for me?
These are tales of torture, rape, mutilation, or in Emmanuel's case, contortion.
Yeah.
They beat me up saying I was betraying the country because I did not join the military. They tied my hands and feet, and the beating continued.
In Eritrea, forced position torture is really common, and one of the more common things to do is to tie people's hands behind their back, to tie their ankles together, and then tie their ankles to their wrists.
What's it like for you hearing some of these stories?
It's tough.
Feelings aside, Dr. Nelson is about facts. He leads the Human Rights Clinic at Oakland's Highland Hospital. It's the only clinic of its kind in the Bay Area where doctors document evidence of torture, adding a scientific voice to asylum cases. Do people feel safe to come here for help?
I think that people don't feel safe anywhere right now.
This movement against refugees, whenever I hear about it, I think it's a death sentence.
It's a shared fear. 20-year-old ABELA escaped Guatemala with her son.
They starved us and beat us. They even tried to rape me, and they raped my sister right in front of me.
ABELA is one of a record number of Central Americans seeking U.S. protection. Within that group are tens of thousands of children who federal officials say crossed the border alone. Many of them also applied for asylum.
We will secure our border once and for all.
In June, the Trump administration announced victims of gang and domestic abuse no longer qualify for U.S. asylum protection.
If you cross the southwest border unlawfully, then we will prosecute you. It's that simple.
People who we see are a lot more scared than they used to be.
Sitting in the dark, her hands around her son, ABELA says the fear she feels in this hospital room doesn't compare. Did you ever go back home?
I'm too afraid to go back.
Most of these patients are referred by immigration attorneys. Research by the group Physicians for Human Rights shows asylum seekers with a medical evaluation more than double their chances of having asylum approved. Nearly 90% of them are granted asylum. Frank and Heather?
Candice, really interesting. So who's paying for this?
So most of these patients, according to Dr. Nelson, have some sort of health insurance, whether it's Medi-Cal or through the county. These are asylum seekers, so they do have cases that are going through. They are documented in that sense of their asylum cases are being reviewed. But he says a lot of times the hospital absorbs a lot of additional costs.
Candice, how do they decide who to take, and do they have to turn people away?
So the hospital can't turn away anyone, but they say their waiting list is about 3 months long. Most of their patients are referred to by these attorneys, immigration attorneys, but a lot of times they don't have time for them. Or in this case, actually in the last 6 months or so, he says a lot of his doctors are actually going to ICE detention facilities to see patients, but there is definitely a larger demand than they have services.
All right, Candice Nguyen in the newsroom. Thank you.
And if you have a story